if you love this sport, then you love this sport. You know, it is, you can make a space here, like I've done, like so many of my friends have done. It is not something that gets to like the homophobes and transphobes of the world do not get to ruin this thing that you love. So my name is Jay. I am a bisexual trans guy goaltender. I have been in hockey since about 2012. I have been queer for much, much longer, but those two things didn't really kind of intersect until probably January 2019, I think.
Okay. And how did you get into hockey?
So I was still identifying as a woman back then, and in 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics, I was watching the Canada America women's gold medal game,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw that and was like, wow, I wanna do that.
That's awesome. And you just jumped right in?
Yep, found a local team. Couldn't skate, couldn't really do anything, but they were really great. They were like, yeah, come on board. I learned to play. Ended up stepping into goalie gear one time, and then that just kind of it went from there.
And like that first, did you know you want to be a goalie before, or was it that first time at night you were like, okay, now I'm a goalie?
So I liked the idea of being a goalie, but because the gear was so expensive, we had a goalie at the time. I was just kind of like, maybe I'll learn to skate first, and then we'll take it as it comes. But we lost our goalie. We had like a spare club kit. Everyone took it in turns, and then one week it was my turn. And yeah, I just kind of was like, oh, this is like, I was like, I couldn't be worse in net than I am out. So I kind of fell in love with the position. So
And now you're better in net than you were out.
world's better.
What do you love about hockey?
It's just like on the ice, it feels very much like, and I've talked about this a little bit before, it feels very much like just all of the noise goes away. It's really kind of a calming experience, especially, being in net. I feel it really kind of centers me, and I'm like, okay. And I think it's partially because there's so much padding that it's very hard to kind of tell anyone's gender in goalie gear, and so it feels very much like I can be whoever I want to be in when I'm in goal, and the team doesn't, as long as I'm stopping pucks, you know, the team doesn't care, the other team doesn't care. It's just a very kind of soothing thought process to have.
That's interesting. I've never, the first part resonates with me because when I was struggling with my sexuality and being in net, on the ice was the only time where I didn't have to think.
Yeah.
So that really resonates. The second part's fascinating. And how long did it take you to realize that? Was it
Um,
instantly or?
it was around about the time so I've known I was trans for a long time now, but I say recently, I came out 4 years ago, I think. And so at the time I was still playing women's hockey, and then I stopped playing women's hockey when I came out and started exclusively playing men's hockey. And it just kind of occurred to me that, like, no one really treated me any differently, except they started calling me Jacob instead of Jay. And like, guys in the handshake line after a game or whatever would, call me dude or things like that. And it just kind of felt very much like, oh, okay, it was a weird kind of, it was really affirming to have that assumption, because at the time I hadn't started like medically transitioning really. It was all social. And so it was very much the first time where people just didn't really question whether I was a guy or not. And that was, it just kind of, it felt right.
How could hockey be better for you?
Oh man. I'm really lucky in that my team supports me all the way. When I came out, everyone was great. Like, I didn't really have any issues. I haven't had any issues on the ice with other teams, anything like that. The way that I think hockey could improve is me as a fan, I think. And, I know we've talked at length about the NHL's specific, like, failings to queer people and to trans people specifically. Um, and I think it is just a case of, I want more visibility. I want them to acknowledge that, like, queer people exist, but also that, like, trans people exist, because I feel like when they do acknowledge queer people, it is, cisgender gay men and women. And it's like, that's great. That's, obviously we need it, but I want to see more people like me get a chance.
That makes a lot of sense. And take a step further, it's typically masculine, cis men, queer men, gay men, who predominantly are white. It goes even further than just gay men. I think it's like the most privileged of gay men.
Yeah, it feels very much like it's, oh, these gay guys, they're just like us, they are just like straight people, and they find the most like stereotypically masculine gay
Me.
guys, I feel like, where,
Yeah.
hey, he might as well be a straight guy. Look how he's not camp, he's not feminine in any kind of way. It's really frustrating.
Do you think they just feel like, well, it's like safe, or what do you think the reason is, or they're just comfortable with that because it's still a form of conforming to their culture? Like, what do you think it is?
Yeah, I think so. I think it is very much like, well, this is as close as we can get to, like, quote unquote, the norm, without actually having it be the norm. And, like, I hate this cisgender heterosexual, like, rich white guy is what's considered the norm for the NHL, but, like, the fact of the matter is, like, that is normal for them. And I think it is like, okay, I want to say it's like baby steps almost. And so, they finally started to acknowledge Black men as, people that need visibility in this league. They've just started to acknowledge that, cisgender gay men are something that needs visibility in this league. And so, like, I hope that they can keep taking steps and kind of acknowledge that, the LGBT community is full of so many different amazing gender identities, sexualities, everything.
So what do you think then that those privileged, masculine presenting white cis gay men who are being acknowledged, or allies that are being acknowledged, can do better to push the envelope to ensure that the entire community is being represented and visible?
Yeah, I think it's very much a case of, and like, it's something that I try to do as well, as someone who does present as, a white guy. Um, it's important to me to kind of say, hey, no, we need spaces for people of color in this community. We need spaces for women in this community. And so I'm always very conscious on speaking out for those people and saying, hey, listen to them, don't listen to me. I think I have things that I can say that are, for the trans community. I think, I feel really comfortable speaking up about that. But if it's very much a case of, like, pushing people to explore other avenues of diversity, if that makes sense, like, I think it's very much a case of, I want to be careful that I'm not speaking over, again, people of color, women of color, trans women. I don't ever want to speak over them, but I want to make sure that I'm including them in the conversation in a really, like, explicit way, which I think is something that, again, is tough to do, because I know it feels very much like, I don't want to speak for these people, so I just won't speak, I think is how that comes across sometimes. And so it's a tough thing to balance, but I think that's what's important, especially for, cisgender, gay, white guys, allies. You know, it's something that you have to do consciously, but something that has to be done carefully, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Almost like slowing down.
Yeah.
Don't rush to tweet, don't rush to add input, like observe, listen, amplify, and then add in where it's meaningful and where it matters and where you can contribute to uplift.
100%. And it's so like for example, I will always look for, with Black Lives Matter, I explicitly went out and I looked for Black voices to amplify. They were the tweets I was retweeting. Like I have opinions on this, obviously, but it was really important to me to not be just another white person making a big long tweet thread of how we have to be better as white people. It was important to me to be like, right, I'm going to retweet Black voices. I'm going to amplify their voices. And, like I have a fairly small platform, all things considered, but it was important to me to make sure that my like 300 followers or whatever were seeing Black voices instead of just me being like, hey, white people, we need to be better. Because at a certain point, like, yeah, we do need to be better, but also that starts to ring hollow, I think.
Completely. It becomes performative very quickly.
Right.
So knowing like basically what you said about hockey, what keeps you in it? What keeps you here? What keeps you as a fan? More so than playing, because playing I understand, the joy of playing, but what keeps you as a fan of hockey?
The thing that keeps me in it is the community, I think, and it's the on ice product. Like I genuinely love watching this sport. Like I haven't watched a ton of the playoffs just because, my team's not in it and it's not on at a great time for me. But I do genuinely love watching hockey. Like if there is hockey on, I will put it on. Like I watched basically all of the World Championships games that just aired. I've seen a ton of the earlier games, obviously because games start at like midnight for me. So if it's an afternoon game, it's perfect. And so I do genuinely enjoy watching it, and so I think that kind of keeps me in it. But it is frustrating to know that the players who I used to have so much respect for so many NHL players, and I feel like the more I learn about them off the ice, the more I'm like, I don't know that these are people that I want to necessarily support. So it is tough to kind of keep coming back to this sport and say I love this sport when it continually turns around and says, well, we don't love you back. Yeah. And that's tough.
So with that said, what gives you hope for queer people in the sport, in hockey?
I think it is people like you, people like Curtis, people like Jessica Platt, Harrison Brown, Zach Sullivan, people who have come out and said this is not okay. Either, in the case of, you and Zach and Jessica and Harrison, people who have come out and said, we're here and we're gay, we're bi, we're trans, we're not going anywhere. We can play hockey just like you guys can. Which at a certain point, I think I don't love the concept of, well, if we can play, you can play, because I feel like there's a lot to unpack there in terms of, well, if we can play, then why aren't we? And it's very much like, well, because hockey is built so gay people are subconsciously excluded, even if teams are like, well, we support gay rights, it feels very much like they don't actually do that. And in the case of guys like Curtis, they're speaking up and saying, this is not okay. We need to do better. We need to create a space for LGBT voices.
And beyond that, I think it shouldn't just be about playing. It should be about enjoying the sport and loving it and being a fan of it too.
Yeah, I should not be afraid to walk into an NHL rink.
So the whole premise of if you can play, well, it shouldn't matter. And also, it shouldn't matter your skill level. Like you shouldn't be judged, period.
Right.
You should just be able to play the sport. and love the sport
Yeah,
without
like
feeling.
I play Saturday night beer league hockey in England. You know, it is not it's pretty high level for like the beer league of the UK, but I could step on beer league hockey in, you know, Canada, America, most other places and just be completely out of my depth. But it doesn't matter. I've decided that, and I guess this kind of all comes back to why do I stay? Because I don't want the sport to push me away. I refuse to have something I love taken away from me. I'm going to make a space here, and if you don't like it, then that's your problem.
And I think we're starting to do that, and I think it's so important and valuable. It's and it's not just queer folk. It's so many minority groups. You know, you look at what the Heroes program's done. You look at Black Girl Hockey Club, and you look at so many. It's almost saying we don't need the traditional.
Right. We don't
We
need
are,
your like permission to exist here.
yeah, we're creating our own space, and we're going to make it bigger, better, more fabulous, and everyone is welcome to enjoy and celebrate and party and have a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good reason for hope.
Yeah, I think so.
Awesome. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Um, I don't think so. I think just to like, and again, I feel like I keep reiterating this over and over, but it is, you know, I want to make it clear to everyone that like the hockey is for you. I hate the concept of hockey is for everyone because, and we've talked about this a little before, it feels very much like it's an all lives matter statement. But hockey is, if you want hockey to be for you, then hockey is for you. It doesn't matter who you are. If you love this sport, then you love this sport. You know, it is, you can make a space here, like I've done, like so many of my friends have done. It is not something that gets to like the homophobes and transphobes of the world do not get to ruin this thing that you love.
That's couldn't have said it better myself. That's so powerful. And Jay, hockey is for you,
Yeah.
and we are celebrating you. And thank you for all you do. Thank you for being an active voice. Thank you for loving this sport that desperately needs more voices like yours.
Thank you for thank you for bringing me on board to talk about this. It's like I said, I take any excuse to kind of talk about this stuff, but it really does kind of, if my voice can make a difference to one person, then it will be worth it.
And it will. More than one, many.